Rose could be an interesting day for Hangouts.
Okay, my lower third thing is not working at all.
It's okay, Gina. We'll tell everyone over and over again who Gina is.
There you go. That might be safer.
Cool. So I'll edit this out when we reshare this, so it's okay that we're just having banter right now. So we don't have viewers yet, but give me a sec. Let's go ahead and post that we're live.
Rafranz, what's the hashtag for equity? Is it DL Day Equity or is it something else?
Well, it has honestly been DL Day depending on the hour that we were talking about, but if we want to do it DLD Equity just for this chat, we can.
It's DLD Equity or DL Day Equity?
No, it was DL Day.
Uh-huh.
But we didn't create one specifically for equity, but we can use that.
Oh. Well, I just tweeted this. Does that work?
Yeah.
Boom. Cool. It looks like we have some viewers joining us. So welcome everyone to the DL Day Equity on Air that we're doing here with our lovely guests today. You can follow along with the hashtag DL Day. And so we'll be having this chat concurrently on Twitter, where DL Day goodness has been happening all day long. And then you can also post any questions here in the Q&A in the Google Plus event, if that's where you're watching it. But we really encourage you to ask questions, to share any insights you have into digital use equity in your classroom or at your school. But Digital Learning Day has been a really exciting day to share all of these things and to think what it means for our communities and beyond. So I'll go ahead and have the panel introduce themselves, and maybe you can share with us your name, where you're at now, because I know we're all spread out in different places this evening, and then also just your own interest in digital use, equity, and what you want to share today. Rafranz, tell us.
Sure, Rafranz Davis, originally from Texas, but I had the pleasure of hosting DL Day all day today, and I'm currently still in DC. And digital equity or equity period is really near and dear to my heart in the work that we do, in really impressing upon people to think about that in our online communities as well. So I am exceptionally excited to be here today to learn and to discuss this with all of you.
Awesome. Thanks, Rafranz. Miss Jennie Magiera, tell us, where are you? What are you up to today? I saw your great hashtag going on at your school district as well, so lots of great digital learning happening across the board.
Yeah, hey everyone. Happy Digital Learning Day. My name's Jennie Magiera, and I hail from the Windy City, Chicago, Illinois, where we had blue skies today in celebration of Digital Learning Day. I'm the Chief Technology Officer at Display School District 62, and we're just right by O'Hare Airport, so you fly over us usually when you come to our beautiful city. And like Rafranz, equity, student agency, and making sure all of our students have access to opportunity is a passion of mine, as I'm sure it is for many. And I'm really thrilled to be joining today to talk about not only the digital divide, but the digital use divide, and how we are making school a launch pad for infinity for all of our kiddos.
Woo! Thanks, Jennie. Awesome. Great. We have Gina with us today as well. Hi, Gina. I saw your lower third worked on one of you.
Yes, one of us, but not the other one. So I am from West Harrison Elementary in a little tiny place called Mondayman, Iowa, on the southwestern border of Iowa, right up against Nebraska. And I teach a class of 5th graders, and we do one-to-one in our classroom all day long. However, as far as digital equity goes with us, out of a class of 16 kids, I've got 5 kids that don't have internet access at home. and 7 kids that have no access to anything that would be a device in their home that they could do any kind of homework on whatsoever. So I'm just interested in hearing other people's experiences with digital equity and ways that I can help my kids be as productive as humanly possible in the digital age.
Awesome. Thanks so much, Gina. And I think this is such a awesome way to end DL Day. I mean, we think about all these lovely ways that our kids can use technology, but the reality is we still have quite a ways to go with equity. So it's so awesome that we're ending it here with you, Gina and Jennie and Rafranz and Chris Bell to chat about it, and with everyone watching online. So we hope you share as well who you are. If you are following online, you can answer this question as well. But if you want to introduce yourself with the hashtag DL Day and let us know your background and why you're interested in equitable use of technology in schools, or what you're doing as well. Chris, tell us, who are you, what do you do, and what's your experience with equity?
So I'm Chris Bell. I'm with EdTech team living in Southern California, currently at our offices here in Irvine, where it is actually raining for a rare occasion. I am a former classroom teacher and a former district instructional technology coordinator prior to coming on board with EdTech team. And in my roles and in my experience, I saw a lot of challenges on both sides of it, both from access, both at home, as well as the experience that students have in the classroom. And that's one of the areas where I'm very particularly interested that we really work to bridge that gap, so that all students have the opportunities to, as Jennie articulated, to ultimately launch moonshots.
Awesome. Thanks, Chris. Yeah, I think equity will get us to that point. My own experience and interest is in international development as well, so it's always so great to hear all of these stories from around the world on how we can increase access and equity to help bring this to some of the most remote corners of the world and make sure every student has access to information and access to really quality teaching and learning. So that's my own interest behind all this as well. Cool, guys. Well, let's kick off with a question. What do all of you think is the most important thing that can be done to encourage equitable use of technology in schools? So thinking of your position and what you currently do day to day, what's the most important thing that all of you do to try to ensure this access?
I think that something that is big for us, you know, I came from Chicago Public Schools, where I worked for over a decade with students in high-need areas of the city. For most of my time, I worked in schools that were above 95% free and reduced lunch, and almost entirely minority populations. And I think what I realized is that a lot of times we assume we know what students need from literature and research and assumptions, and we think that we're not stereotyping students by keeping in mind stereotypes that we've heard in the past and trying to fight those. But what we realized we needed to do a better job of is asking our students more about what they want, and not focusing solely on literature and what we've read, but really engage our students in the conversation and hear their unique experiences, because an African American student on the south side of Chicago is not like every African American on the south side of Chicago. Every Latina student in Des Plaines, Illinois, is not like every other student. It doesn't matter if you live next door to each other or even in the same household. We need to remember that our kiddos aren't clones of each other. My friend Amanda Pelser just sent me a really hilarious meme that said, "The Force awakens in your classroom when you stop treating students like clones." And I think that equity has a lot to do with recognizing the individuality of students and making sure that we're being equitable not only across racial and social economic lines, but also individualizing the students to understand that they should also not be labeled by their backgrounds, the color of their skin, or a subgroup that they're in. And so we had to work on doing that a lot better in both of the districts I've worked in, and engaging our students in conversations so that we're creating very specific services to the kids based on their unique needs.
Totally. Attack of the Clones. Thanks, Jenny. I love that metaphor. We do have a question from...
Wait. Can I add to that real quick? Because I think there's one really important part that we have to do. And I love, definitely we have to get our students and what they want and who they are as people, but there's some real barriers that are happening out there in our schools. And my school was no different. You know, we had barriers to getting that voice. We had barriers to our own understanding of even the opportunities that we offered in our school district, who was actually getting those opportunities. So I think that districts have to really have real talk conversations with themselves. You need to look at your data. You need to see who's getting into these programs. How are they getting into these programs? Which kids are we truly serving? Because just having the opportunities isn't enough if the kids aren't able to take advantage of them, and also if the kids are not even aware to take advantage of them.
I agree completely. And, you know, Wendy, I don't want to overtalk your question, but Rafranz, I think that I've had a huge learning experience coming from the schools that I taught in before to my current schools. Again, coming from a place where we had 2 students out of almost 700 who were not African American, and they were Mexican American students. And so when I moved to my new district, where our low income population is 60% and our students of color are around 66%, that's actually a harder challenge to combat, because we have to think about how we're treating students next to each other and how we're equalizing within a classroom, within a school district, within a city block of each other. And that was never a challenge I had to face before. And I realized that challenges of equity are a lot more difficult when not everyone looks the same. And sometimes 100% low-income built areas, and I'm not trying to belittle that. I worked in that area for a while, and there's a lot of serious challenges that we need to do a better job as a society addressing. But making sure that kids feel comfortable sitting next to each other when the student next to you goes home to a different set of opportunities than you do, and then you have to go and learn with them 8 hours a day, is really challenging as a school district leader, as a classroom teacher, and we need to be cognizant and careful of how we create those opportunities without further marginalizing our students.
Yep.
Totally. Gina or Chris, do you have anything to add in terms of maybe some of these barriers that Jennie and Rafranz brought up, or how you can go from opportunity, which I think a lot of programs give, and there's a lot out there, but how do we help folks get aware of it, or how do we make sure that we're giving those same opportunities to the same people, you know, even in the same classroom, making sure it's accessible? What do you guys think?
I think...
I'm sorry, go ahead, Chris.
No, go ahead. Go ahead.
I would say a lot of our issues are more gender issues than anything else. We have, for our school size in our area, we do not nearly as much as we obviously should be doing in the area of computer science and digital learning. We are a one-to-one school, but there's not necessarily enough focus, I think, put on it. It's been a tough curve for our staff to kind of get behind. But I would say from our area, it's more of a gender issue. A lot of the programming classes, a lot of the computer type classes are being offered, I would say, more to the male population in our school as opposed to the female population. And so for us, it really isn't an issue of different socioeconomic background, because we're a very homogeneous area here. For us, it's more of a gender thing.
So I guess what I would add to the conversation is that one of the things that I have seen within the classrooms and within districts that have shifting demographics is a lack of awareness and a lack of professional learning around how to handle transitions and how to work within different population types. So what happens is you have I'll use examples of districts around us that have been predominantly Caucasian and time are shifting to be 40, 50, 60% of multi-ethnicity. And what teachers that have been in those districts are not equipped to manage those different types of relationships. They're not giving the professional learning opportunities outside of technology. I mean, specifically, how do I handle the changing dynamics of my classroom? And parents who previously were all college educated, and now they're struggling with parents who may or may not have any education beyond high school or even less. So how do we communicate the access opportunities to those parents? How do we make sure that it's not just the school who's doing it, but it's also at the classroom level?
And also, just to add to that, you also have to be very careful about not being, I don't want to say dismissive of other areas that might contribute to that, because you might have, you might have, like I said, tons of opportunities in your school, but I will tell you this, our black students in my school did not feel like computer science or even robotics was for them. They saw the kids in that program, and their minds, that was for them, that was for other kids, that was for white students. It was not something that was created for them, and they did not participate in that. So even if we have these opportunities that might be open and none of us put in, well, there are places that do put in specific barriers, but I can say that we don't create specific barriers for students. Sometimes there are cultural barriers that add to that as well. And I think that when I say having the real talk conversations with your district and with your the people who are making those decisions and creating and framing those programs, it really is about having that dialogue to understand why aren't students doing X, Y, and Z. Because, for instance, and I would, if we didn't identify our issues with race, I probably would have looked at even our robotics and computer science program as only a boy-girl issue, and none of the other issues when you think about their perception of whether or not they can do it, and then also the barriers we put in with availability. Like, you have to be able to stay after school 5 days a week and be there on a Saturday all day. And so when you're working to take care of a family, that socioeconomic barrier exists, even though maybe the district isn't charging the students for it, but it becomes an issue.
Totally. I think I'm looking online, and Bobby Lewis, thanks USA BBS, has said the clubs have qualifications for joining as well. So not only is it these expectations or family commitments that you might have to make, but even just the basic qualifications of signing up for an application, or even entering some of these things. That's a really good point. Thanks, Bobby Online, for sharing other barriers that are there too. I don't know if you guys, since we are talking a bunch about some of these barriers, so I think Rafranz talked about obviously pushing your leadership to go beyond those. Is there any other way to make these qualifications or the commitments and the times, or even just the programming, more accessible in terms of equity? Any other ideas for overcoming these, all these different kind of challenges we've identified?
I think it's hard because there's no right answer. So when when I was in the city of Chicago, I was lucky because a lot of my kids were able to take public transportation home. So I would stay at work until 6, 7 o'clock at night, sometimes well after dinner with my kiddos until whenever, and I could keep them for clubs like that because I was able to ride the L with them home and drop them off at stops along the way home, whereas a lot of districts would not feel comfortable with me like loading up all my 5th graders into my, my Hyundai and saying like, all right, kids, let's go. I'm going to drive you home. It's the Magiera school bus. And there's a lot of, legal issues with being like, oh, I'll just take them home. In some communities, that's a totally fine thing to do. In some communities, it's close enough where everyone knows the teacher and they're like, it's a rural community, and they say it's all right, you can drive your kids home. So I think it's really based on the community, but I think this is where we bring technology into the equation, as Rafranz was saying, when time and space becomes a barrier, how can we leverage the ability to have asynchronous collaboration and community through technology so we can allow our kids access to that learning, to that community, given they need to be home to watch their baby brother because mom has to go on late shift, because they don't have a papa who's at home to take care of their brothers, because they don't have a mama or a daddy because they have auntie and uncle taking care of them, right? Yeah. So if that's the case and they want to stay but they can't, what can we do to use technology to bridge that gap and allow that access? And sometimes it has to be like a fix upon a fix. So we're going to use technology to do it, but our kids don't have access to technology or broadband at home. So it's saying, hey, I'm going to give you an iPad at lunch, and if you want to, you can virtually watch this over lunch and then disparately add in your own comments and find spaces in the day that we can make it happen. I mean, we're teachers. We put everything together with spit and duct tape. When we have technology, it's just stronger spit and stronger duct tape.
Because for me, it has become an issue of how to squish things in during the day. We're in a rural area. We can't provide transportation, so after-school clubs are completely out. Even if I were able to take my kids home, our school district covers 7 communities. It would take me I've got kids that ride the bus one way 45 minutes to get to school. So even if I could get them to stay after school, we've got no transportation to get them home. And for me to do it, it would be quite a lengthy trip. So then when you pair that with they've got no broadband internet in their home, it becomes, a squish a few minutes in here during the day, during lunch, during a special, if for instance there's something that they're not out for band, they're not out for orchestra, then it becomes a juggling match during the day to try and get everybody in.
Totally, lots of squish.
So I'd love to add to this. I think the biggest challenge is obviously there's so many challenges, and Jennie highlights the fact that teachers are going to be creative. They're going to address these needs, but it doesn't address this overwhelmingly comprehensive issue of consistent broadband access for every single person. And you could argue that based on Maslow's hierarchy of needs in our current society, broadband internet access and access to the information, the connections, and the things that brings is almost a basic human right. It's like water now. And so how do communities really have to think long and hard with school districts about how we solve that problem? The current E-rate 2.0 helps address some of those things in terms of bringing access to the schools, bringing, updating Wi-Fi infrastructures and those things, but it doesn't solve the school-to-home issue. So what I've seen have been some really bright spot examples out there of, if you've seen Coachella Valley's that they park next to low-income housing. That's a great example of basically, hey, we're going to bring the internet to the kids. We're going to make this work. Riverside, California partnered with the school district, the city, and local nonprofits to bring citywide Wi-Fi to their entire city, and the district was then able to incorporate bring BYOD as well as take-home devices to solve some of those gaps. Because if we don't address those problems, if we're not teaching the kids in class, in school, how to use these technologies for connections, for learning, for a student voice, but then if it ends at the end of the school day, we're not providing them that full 24/7 experience, and that's where a lot of the learning takes place outside of school. So
and I'll take your note, Chris, and just put that out to the community who's watching as well, because Amanda Causey, thanks Amanda for watching on the Hangout, had a couple of great questions, but I think it leads right into what you just mentioned, Chris. And so I just posted question 3 on the hashtag DL Day, and also here to our lovely panelists. What process do you go through to get the community to partner or promote free Wi-Fi or access to community members? And that question's from Amanda, and I think you shared a couple of examples, Chris, but I'm wondering from the rest of the panel, what are those actual concrete steps? How do you start that conversation? Who starts it? I think oftentimes teachers maybe can feel powerless in that way of, gosh, well, how do I find this time? Who can make that connection for me? Can I make the connection myself? What say you, panelists?
I think for us, it helps that we're in a rural, small town. I call it small, but maybe by standards of where we are, we're actually fairly large, surrounded by a bunch of really small towns. But we're still rural, so there's that. But we have public Wi-Fi in our downtown area, and we have them in several restaurants, and we have the Wi-Fi at the library, and all of those lovely places. But the questions that we were having to answer were kind of, how can we expect our children who are hungry at the end of the day to go to McDonald's to do homework, or to go to Starbucks to do homework? Like, why would you even make that an option? So it helps that our downtown has public Wi-Fi. It helps that we do have public transportation in our small town. I was surprised to see buses here, like public buses. That was pretty amazing to me to see that. But we have a community that truly does support this idea of learning. The one thing that Lufkin does really well is we build our community. The community is involved with the school completely. When we did Hour of Code, we have a communications person, a PR person in our district, our communications director, who contacted the local news, our newspaper and our news agency. We have our own news station here in Lufkin to come in and do a story, and they put it in the paper. Community members were calling the school to know if they could come in and learn. And we had one woman, she was 65 years old, and she's like, I heard anybody could do this, can we come do it? So the benefit of being here right now is that people are ready for it, and especially on our school board. Our school board is very connected to our city council. Our assistant superintendent is a member of the city council. So any of those needs that we have within our community, I think that we do really well with working together to help supply them, but we're nowhere near where we need to be, where every kid has that access. We know that they don't. But having those conversations is a lot easier when you have a relationship, and it helps that we're in a smaller area. I think the larger cities you get into, the more difficult some of those conversations become, unless it is a full citywide effort in order to do it.
I agree.
For us, our schools are the community centers. So, you know, when I first started working in my school downtown, I did like a bootleg Google map where I was like, here's the closest libraries to our school, here are the hours, and I gave them to the kids, and I thought, like, Wi-Fi, nailed it, solved. The kids have a map to the library. They can just go there because they have public transportation, and how naive and silly of me was that. I realized exactly what Rafranz said. After your kids have been in school all day, you can't expect them to hoof it to a library and sit there, to a Starbucks. So that's one of the reasons I was at work so late. I was like, well, I got a lesson plan anyway. So a lot of the teachers would just kind of keep our doors open, and we'd stay at school later, and we'd take turns. Those of us who didn't have our own biological children or a social life to speak of just stayed at school every day, and others who you know, had families to take care of and things like that took shifts. But pretty much there was someone in the building every single day of the week, and actually a lot of times on Saturdays and Sundays, because we had church at our school too. And our building had Wi-Fi. The city of Chicago was paying for it, and the kids would come and do their homework there, and it was a safe space, and they didn't have to worry about commuting from school to somewhere else to home. They would just stay at school. Now that I'm in a new district where commuting's a little bit more of a problem because the public transportation in Des Plaines isn't quite the same as it is you know, in Chicago, we still try and keep our doors open, but, you know, there's thinking about busing and trying to think about carpooling and working with families. So it's definitely a bit more of a pickle, but we're trying to be creative about saying, what are the resources we have, what are the tools we have, and it's kind of shaking out your community toolbox and saying, here are all the pieces I have to play with. Now, that's on one side as a teacher to be empowered. I'm really lucky because this year I got to play CTO, and so as the Chief Technology Officer, I get to look at places like out in California with the Wi-Fi buses, which sounds totally insanely awesome, and I brought it to my business manager, and he did not laugh me out of his office. It's a little bit different in Chicago than in California because we have to think about snow plows and trying to plow streets, and parking buses on the street overnight is a little bit more challenging. But we love hurt your head problems like that, and working together as a community to say, how can we take E-Right money and school district funds along with community money to better support our kids who are part of our community, and that's a fun pickle to dig into.
And I think that's a good point, Jenny. I mean, I think there isn't a one-size-fits-all, and I think just having this toolkit or these options available to schools, just looking out at our community right now, Michael Fricano just shared in the conversation, businesses are starting to realize the importance of free Wi-Fi, and so I think that we'll see an increase in that as well as an option, as one of the many options that everyone's mentioning. Sandra Chow from Toronto online right now is sharing that Ontario has a great kidsatcomputers.ca where kids can apply for equipment and internet, so perhaps that's the solution, right? We've looked at free access, but you know, what can we do to help provide devices and the equipment that they might need to have for themselves. So really great conversations happening in the back channel. Everyone keep sharing on hashtag DL Day. Great answers. Mrs. Drasby says communities need to understand why there is a need for Wi-Fi first. So that's a really good point too, just kind of the awareness. I think that goes to Michael's point as well online, that I think we're just starting to see the cultural shift that this is becoming a necessity for sure. Cool. We got another great on the hashtag. Bobby Lewis again sharing districts can provide Wi-Fi hubs for students to check out and take home. Does anyone have experience with that system working, or does anyone want to share if that? I think he's posted a really cool site that I can retweet right now as well of an example.
Yeah, actually, our high school district, Maine Township 207, that Hank Thiele, Mrs. C Assistant Soup of Tech over at, is doing something really cool where they're partnering with Sprint to get low-cost Wi-Fi hubs, and then they're having other families and community members sponsor Wi-Fi hubs so that they have an...
I think Jennie's having a hangout hiccup. So she's talking about sponsored hubs.
Hey, that's a really fantastic idea. I love
that's
that.
Already. Jennie too is back. You had us at sponsored hubs. Go.
So what's nice about it is they sponsor the hubs and they're anonymous. So you're not, I think there's a lot of families who would be like, I don't want people to know that, that family's sponsoring me, because that again creates the stigma and more inequity in trying to solve the inequity, which is something we have to be careful about. But it's anonymous. It's just saying we're sponsoring a hub. You don't ever find out what family you're sponsoring, and then the more hubs, there's like an army of them, and then they get checked out to kiddos. The biggest challenge of that is not getting people to sponsor the hubs, because it's actually a pretty low cost to sponsor them with the Sprint grant through ConnectEd. It's getting the kids not to burn through all their data in one day. There's a gig on the hubs, and the kids get them, and it's supposed to last them a month, and they'll burn through it in a day. So it's a lot of digital citizenship, teaching them how to use their powers for good, understanding what the purpose of it is, so that the power is not really that it's abused, but like squandered. It's water conservation, which my friends from California on the call probably understand well.
Oh yeah.
Is that the Sprint? I was trying to share out with the community. That's did you say the Sprint grant at ConnectEd?
Yeah, it's great. And so we're the elementary district 2, Maine 207, and we've started talking internally about how we can do that. It's a lot of our families, so we're benefiting from it because a lot of our kiddos have siblings in high school. With that being said, we'd love to think about it to do some cross-district township love and extend it. It definitely takes some thinking, but it's a great idea.
Well, we've seen some excellent examples out here in California with cable providers such as Time Warner and Cox Cable. I don't know if they're national. I think Time Warner's national, where they've done low-cost, subsidized Wi-Fi at home, wireless access points, and all of those things. The challenge is again, you still have people that can't afford that. So I'd love to see something where these companies subsidize or offset this cost, and then other players could come in and grant access. That would eliminate this whole squandering the Wi-Fi issue, because the entire family can benefit from a Wi-Fi access point because they can connect all their devices to it, and everybody can share and communicate, not just the student.
Yeah, I'm about to post a link and put it on the hashtag. A school district here in Texas, Lamar Consolidated, actually did, and it was just a write-up about it, and I saw it on Twitter and shared it to our leadership group in our app we're using. And what they did is they gave all of their pre-K students devices and a Khajiit take-home access point. And they had whatever the literacy programs that they were working on loaded onto the device, and so that the kids could have access to it over the summer. And I was like, that's something we should be looking at, because that's such a really good idea. I'm not advocating for Khajiit. I don't know how much they are. I haven't looked into that, but I do know that the more that we see that the schools are providing this access, the more we've realized, and we've had these discussions, that we're going to have to do something. We can't just rely on the public Wi-Fi from the city. We're going to have to really think of some creative ways to make this happen. I had not looked at this Sprint grant, Jenny, and I'm going to have to look at that now, because we're all about the Connect Ed stuff, especially when it is little to no cost. And in any of those resources are especially exceptional with helping to do that. My only concern is I know that the kids have to really think about conserving the data that they get, and it's idealistic to think that they can all get unlimited data, but that's another hard part is kind of saying, hey, you have to use your data for this, but you can't use it for this. And I mean, and what do you do when that's the options that you have, and they know that they need it for X, Y, and Z? But I think it will push us, hopefully, to really think about the work that we ask them to do, and also providing with not relying completely on that access point to do it. Like, don't assign the kid to watch a 20-minute video on an access point with only 1 gig of data. You're going to have to really think about how we empower them in really meaningful ways.
Totally. I love the thought of digital citizenship being in here, and with equity and power comes also restraint. So I do want to extend. Michael Cohen in the community here has shared you know, any thoughts on taking this to a global level, and how can we engage, you know, that we're talking about engaging corporations or engaging governmental initiatives. Does anyone have any ideas about kind of 10xing this and blowing it up to a larger scale? If you could do anything to take some of these great ideas that all of us have shared in terms of sponsoring access. Any thoughts for Michael on taking that to a global scale and what those partnerships might look like?
So I don't know if I should be saying this on a public hangout or not, and if anyone from Des Plaines is listening.
Oh, sorry, Jenny, I can't hear you.
Don't tell our business manager yet. So one of the things, so our Wi-Fi routers are all internal, and with E-rate right now, this year we're applying for 1-to-1, so one E-rate, one access point for every classroom. At next year, we're still eligible for E-rate, and we'll be quote-unquote saturated. We have a really good infrastructure. We'll be at 1-to-1. We'll have a lot of things in our common areas. There's wireless access points that turn outside of the building and are water and are weatherproof and can go on our roof and can go on some of our external facilities and push out into our neighborhoods. And so we've started casually talking about what if next year with E-rate we put it on our buildings and we start pushing wireless out into our neighborhoods from our school buildings. We're a 1.5 city district, so we're Des Plaines and Rosemont. So we're not as widespread as Gina, your district is. So I'm sure this, again, it's not a one-size-fits-all solution, but we're excited about the idea of, you know how when you were little and you'd leave the front door open in the summer and your mom would tell you that you're stop air conditioning the outside? We want to Wi-Fi the outside, and I think it's kind of like a little bit of a crazy idea. It's maybe not as crazy as what Daryl did out in Cali with the buses, but for us it's something that is different, we haven't heard done before, and we want to really kind of push the limit and think, you know, how are we supporting our kids when they leave our walls? So how can we push Wi-Fi out beyond our walls and use amplifiers to extend that network?
Hey, I'm glad you brought that up, because I know a district that's actually been testing that this year.
Yay,
and I will put you in touch. I will put you in touch.
Call me, Kay.
Yep, because they were trying to solve. Yeah.
Oh, sorry, Bill. Go ahead.
No, they were trying to solve that exact issue. They had a high-density population right around these elementary school sites, and short of being able to provide citywide Wi-Fi and wireless access in the home, they were like, okay, this is a temporary fix that we can at least try. So I'll link you two up.
And if you guys can share on the hashtag, I know there's talk of Connect Ed and E-rate. If anyone has links to those for maybe folks who aren't familiar with some of the really great governmental programs that are out there available. I think what's so great about DL Day and our panelists joining us today is really just sharing these resources and these ideas. So it's been so exciting. I've already got 10 different links and ideas floating just from the last 10 minutes. So Michael also shared online Project Loon from Google. So there are international initiatives to definitely provide access at scale, for sure. Cool.
I'm tweeting out the Sprint Connected one right now. It was actually 3 gigs per month for $100 per student for a year. So it was $100 per year for 3 gigs per month, and so that's what they were having families over at Maine 207 sponsor each other for.
Here's another thing that I just saw. I don't know how many of you use Everything On, but Everything On, you can put in your zip code and you can find high-speed access for a pretty decent cost. And I'm looking at one now for my area that we can get basic internet for $10 a month, or $20 a month. You get more gigs of data, but then there's also computer offers attached to this that I think that's cool. That a family can get a desktop computer or a laptop or a tablet if the school isn't providing it. I literally have not pulled this up, so this was pretty surprising to me. I will give kind of a little caveat about Everything On. The equipment cost is, like this one is $69 or $79, and it requires a credit card or a debit card. And I have known just from the families that we've worked with, having a debit card or a credit card is also still a luxury sometimes that people don't have. So I'm really now wondering and thinking about how can we be really creative about this. I think I heard someone posted something earlier about collecting donated access points. I think you might have mentioned that, Jenny. But I'm wondering how many of these things that we can have sponsored for our families, and if we can have a system to purchase this so that they can have access to it. It's really interesting. I did not know about the device purchases in there. Like a desktop computer for like $150. That's a lot, but at the same time, when you're talking about the service that it provides an entire family, that's for a lot of people that could be doable. So we'll definitely be sharing Everything On with our community because it could help some who don't have any access at all.
Something else that I think is important to mention too, Rafranz, I think you're right. Like, there's a lot of barriers in the way where even when we come up with these solutions, there's a lot of yes buts and barriers of, okay, we found this great grant, but they don't have a credit card. We did this, but they don't have access because of whatever. And sometimes it's a matter of it's the culture. It's getting families to apply. If we could just get them to fill out a form, we can get them these opportunities, but getting a parent to come and sit in our schools and hear the pitch and fill it out, like we mentioned earlier, a lot of parents are so busy that they don't even have the time to hear about the opportunity to apply for it. What I would encourage districts to do, though, is not wait for Wi-Fi to create digital opportunity for kids. Yes, yeah. Internet and Wi-Fi is a great support, but if we can't get to the finish line, taking a couple steps forward is better than standing still and waiting for you to be asked to begin. So our students, we're still struggling at getting them at-home Wi-Fi, but we have a lot of our older laptops that are becoming a little too dilapidated to be functional within a hard, rough and tumble school situation, but are totally functional enough to be personal devices, and instead of selling them back to resellers or recycling them, we're giving them to our low-income families. Yep. So every, I'd say, quarter, we're giving away about 100 to 300 laptops to our students, and those are the devices that normally go into the recycling bin or get sold back to resellers, and that's been really great. We load them, we clone them, we load them up with non-Wi-Fi dependent software, we teach families how to use them well, and even though they're not getting as much power, like a fraction of the power as if they had an internet connection, I'm not trying to belittle that, it's still better than them not having any device at all. So yeah. Don't wait for internet connection to start thinking about ways to get your students access to digital tools, because there's a lot we can do without the internet as well.
That's a good point, Jenny. There's a district that we've been working with for several years that had gone like almost one-to-one for a number of years, and those devices aged. They replaced everything with Chromebooks, and what they've been doing with the older devices is repurposing them into Ubuntu machines, installing them with Chrome, installing with everything. So if they have Wi-Fi access, great, they have a Wi-Fi connection. But otherwise, they have offline capability with all of the offline tools that come with Ubuntu. So it's worked out really, really well. So I'm glad that you guys are doing that as well.
Awesome. Creativity, I think, is the overwhelming theme here. And it looks like Ron from Canada and Google Plus has said, Jennie as well, that spit and duct tape will be in their toolkit as well. So cool. And Laura B. Fogel online too has been sharing some really great resources under the hashtag. But she said here in the Hangout that Connect Home program makes Wi-Fi more affordable. District buys a device and program provides service. So really neat kind of cost sharing or program sharing as well. So much creativity out there, and I think it's just finding it, and I love it, Jennie. Don't wait, right? Because if we sit and wait for the perfect one-to-one classroom with perfect access, our kids are going to graduate before that might happen. So I think that's what all of these great ideas are. What can we do? So I think as we start to wrap up, everyone, we've talked about some really big stuff here today. What is that tomorrow in the classroom, that some of our teachers and educators, what's something immediately that they can do to improve digital use equity in their schools? What's something tangible that they might be able to do very quickly? Any thoughts on that for our send-off to everyone out there?
Personally, right now at our school district, I'm going to be very honest, we are still in the mindset building stage. And so we're currently cross-checking and going between two different pieces. We're using the Future Ready data dashboard. We're also using the National EdTech Plan to drive some conversations. At the same time, while we do have teachers in our district who are really ready, and even when they weren't ready, are truly trying to rethink how they are, I guess, creating better opportunities for students to learn. We're letting them move forward, and we're not holding those teachers back, or any of them back for that matter. But right now, for me, and my focus is on building that capacity within our leadership so that our teachers and students can feel like they can, I hate to even say use technology because you think that's a normal thing, but it's not. But just so they can have the ability to think and have some agency that technology or not technology, they need that. And I think that this particular part of the work is really important, because if not, then what we create are a bunch of Band-Aids, but we really haven't solved any of our problems whatsoever. So we're in the, let's see what, I love the, I feel fortunate to have been a part of Digital Learning Day in a very one-to-one environment, but I look forward to taking these conversations back home and saying, how can we learn from this and what can we do, and then doing it.
I agree completely about the Band-Aid piece, and I think that as we're working to build capacity, access to opportunity, and infrastructure for our kids, what we're simultaneously, and actually even before, trying to do with our adult learners, our educators and district leadership, is have them start to identify the challenges and goals that they want to see to improve teaching and learning in a much deeper way, pedagogically, social emotionally, in terms of equity, extrinsic of the technology. So, my broken record, if you talk to any of the people in my district, is how are we making things both different and better, and what are the challenges that you want to solve to make the life of your students better, to help them become better versions of themselves. And our biggest mantra around that is, how are we solving old problems with new tools? What I would love for my teachers to do is make sure that when they get the devices in the hands of their students, when we solve this inexorable Wi-Fi gap, is that they don't say we made it. We got Wi-Fi for all kids, check, done, nailed it. And unfortunately, that's what I see happening even within our own district. Like, all right, we got iPads, done, digital, boom. And that's what the digital use divide is all about. The digital divide is the access to the Wi-Fi, is the access to the devices. And unfortunately, a lot of our schools, ours included, we get the access to the devices, but the use is still that low-level Band-Aid behavior that Rafranz talked about. So to help proactively change the mindset before the devices get there, and for some of our teachers who already have the devices, we're having them ask themselves, how is this changing the lives of your students? I think saying the SAMR model used to be enough, but I think we need to push it even beyond redefinition, because it's not just about, was this not possible without technology, but if this wasn't possible without technology, why is this making it better for your kids, and how is your kid a better version of themselves now that they've done that than they were before? And if it's not solving a problem, if it's not improving their lives, then it might not be worth it. And we want to make sure that every step of the way we're auditing our own practice and making sure that we're bridging both that digital divide, but more importantly, the digital use divide, because we can get technology in the hand of every single kid. We can get Wi-Fi in the home of every single family. But if we're not being smart with the way that we use the tools, if we're not using them for good and not evil, then in some ways we could even be doing more damage than good.
And I think for us, it really needs to be a discussion that starts with our staff members to where there is some semblance of uniformity across the board. And then it needs to really move into our school board and then out into our communities. In an area like ours, it's going to take a full-fledged community support from all 7 communities in order for everybody to have a unified vision of how we want this to be for our kids and what would be the best venue to take or the best options for us to use in order to make digital equity a reality for our students.
What do I say? I think you guys have covered it all. I'm enlightened. I love this. I think the reality is that to piggyback on what was just articulated, I think that the vision needs to be there from the community as well as the district, and I think that a really concentrated org change effort needs to be in place that supports teachers where they are at and where they need to be through the change process. And the secondary aspect of it is that teachers need to also understand that kids are bringing different skill sets, mindsets, cultural values to the process, and they can enhance that, and they can also tap into that in the classroom when we're talking about digital usage and also working to bridge the digital equity divide.
Can I recommend something? So what we've actually been working on this year, again, it's my first year as CTO in this district. I've only been there since July, and I'm really fortunate that I have built a great relationship with our assistant soup of instructional services, so my counterpart in curriculum. And coming in, I realized that our digital transformation plan, or our technology plan, hadn't been updated for a while, and so we threw out the template and we adopted a certain honeycomb from a certain team of ed tech that was really powerful for us. So the six pieces of the honeycomb: student agency, empowered teachers, courageous leadership, robust infrastructure, engaged community, and inspiring spaces. I got it. Okay. So I think I did it in the wrong order, but we used those to rewrite our digital transformation plan in concert with our instructional services team. And next year we're working with instructional services, student services, and technology services to do kind of like a triad of awesomeness all around student agency, which is the first honeycomb piece that we're going to dig into. And because we have that shared language and that shared focus and goal, it's going to really help us as we walk into classrooms to talk about pedagogy, to talk about social emotional learning, and the digital piece is going to be the jet plane or the rocket ship that gets all those goals done better, smarter, more efficiently, and to higher levels of magic than we'd ever imagined. But I wasn't really feeling as successful until we wrote out that plan together collaboratively, and that came out of the National Ed Tech Plan. That came out of the leadership section of that said you need to do it. It can't just be the CTO. It has to be everyone involved. And actually the Future Ready website spells out who should be involved, who you should engage, and I can't recommend the EdTech Team Honeycomb for Future Ready enough, because it's so easy to digest, and I showed it to our team and they were like, oh my god, that's what we were thinking, but we didn't have the word and visualization to say. So if you haven't checked it out, I actually should know the website, but I don't. But maybe if you Google Honeycomb Future Ready, I don't know, Chris or Wendy?
I tweeted it already, and
okay.
I tagged it. I put it out there.
If you haven't seen the National Educational Technology Plan, maybe I'll tweet it out right now, but tech.ed.gov/NETP. And I swear it is actually really easy to read, and it's got great links to great practical examples. And we're doing Twitter chats on it on Tuesday nights here for the next couple of weeks. So read it, come and chat. But I think Jenny's right. It's got a great framework behind it. That I think the planning, right? I think we've all talked about good ideas, and the resources that are there, the vision, the leadership. So it kind of all goes together. And all of you came together today to chat and share all of this with our community. So I wanted to thank our panelists. So nice round of applause for you guys, especially our East Coasters staying up with us. And hopefully, if you're watching it or if you have time later, I know I'm going to go through the hashtag DL Day for Digital Learning Day and get not only all the resources that we just shared in the last hour, but I mean, I was just skimming right now, and there's little scratch code cards that are laminated. That's so many awesome ideas out there. So hopefully we can keep this going. Is there anything, Rafranz, for Digital Learning Day that folks can do after today at the site? Will it be full of great resources and keep this celebration of digital learning alive beyond today?
Absolutely. Every video from today has been archived, so if you have not seen them, I suggest you go watch them. They're 20 minutes long, and the cool part was the only story that I knew about beforehand was Coachella Valley's Wi-Fi buses. The rest of them I had no idea about. So I'm really excited about going back and having some really rich discussions about it. All of the resources that teachers submitted are still there and searchable. So if you're still looking for ideas for your classroom, that database where they submitted their ideas is still there. The site isn't going away. There will be another Digital Learning Day next year with hopefully another educator hosting. I think that was a really interesting twist from what I understood, even in the way that it was done in the past. So definitely watch the archives, definitely continue the discussion, and learn and share something. I'm going to save this hangout because I think when I listen to Jennie talk, I feel like I need a notepad so I can write down all of the things. And I'm excited right now, and I can't wait to get back and work. It's not easy work, but it's work that's worth it, and that's what matters.
It's beloved work.
Yes.
Awesome. Thanks, Rafranz. Thanks, Gina. Thanks, Jennie. Thanks, Chris. And thanks to everybody online. Deborah Goodman says she's going to go back and view all the videos. Regina says she loves your district's approach, Jennie. So we got folks excited online today as well. So we're so excited to give equity and access even to professional learning and people spending their evenings thinking about this and how to improve education for all students. So thanks, everyone, and we'll see you online. Bye.
Bye.
Thanks, guys.